So hi to the few of you that are here. I think you might already know the RH, or I've seen your names before at least. But welcome to this session, which is organized by the Waste Working Group of the RH. So I'm Johanna. I'm a climate and environment researcher at Groupe URD, and I'm also the coordinator of the RH. And Céline.
Yes, thank you. My name is Céline Heim. I'm working as coordination in the Sustainable Supply and Waste Management for Action contre la faim, or Action Against Hunger, and part as well, so co-leading the group with Joanna. Thanks.
Thank you. So first, we're just going to quickly present what the RH is. So this session is organized by the Waste Working Group, which is part of the RH, which is a Réseau Environnement Humanitaire, or Humanitarian Environment Network, which is a network of Francophone organizations who work together to reduce the environmental footprint of aid. We have both humanitarian and development workers. And we have over 250 members, including 30 organizations. And there's a lot of different things going around in the network, but we have especially 4 working groups to operationalize really what is happening. And Céline, I think I just received an email. Somebody that's trying to log in. Yeah, thank you. And so we have 4 working groups. We have one on waste, which is the one that's hosting the session today. One on sustainable procurement, which hosted a session this morning. One on carbon, which hosted a session on Tuesday morning, and one on environmental assessment, which held its session on Tuesday afternoon. And you can find all the recordings and minutes of all those different meetings on the RH website, which you have the link underneath here. I don't think you can click on it, but if you research Réseau Environnement Humanitaire, you should find it quite quickly. So the Waste Working Group, it's one of the newest working group at the RH. It launched in September 2022. The aim of the working group is to support member organizations in taking greater account of waste and waste management in their projects. The way it is set up is that the space that we have allows for exchanges of good practices and ways of working between the different members so that they can inform each other and potentially harmonize within their projects. You have all the members of the working group at the bottom of the slide here. And of course, we also collaborate with other initiatives such as the REC and the joint initiatives, notably through the mappings I'm going to talk right after, and also ULO, which you might know, which is the Humanitarian Logistics Cooperative. I'm sorry, I'm receiving lots of emails of people that can't log into 1 second. I'm just going to send them a message. So sorry about that. And basically what we've seen since that the working group has started is that we have mostly HQ people within this working group, but that there's really a need for collaboration and mutualization at the field level between the different organizations, and to work also with the rest of the sector. So not only with humanitarian organizations, but also with development NGOs, the UN, the private sector, governments. And so that's really what the Waste Working Group aims to do. And today what we're going to talk about is we're going to try to explain kind of the issues and the challenges that the member organizations can have been facing when trying to take account their waste and having better waste management, and so present some of the pathways that we've seen that can help answer those challenges. So there's not a lot of us in the room, so don't hesitate to put in the chat who you are, what organization you work for. You know both Celine and I, so we'd be happy to know also who's in the room. So we had some questions, but I'm just going to skip them. So those are the problems that we've identified as a working group. So this is from what we've heard from the different members and the experiences that they've had, there can be lots of other challenges, but these are the main ones that we think we could work in as a group. So firstly is really to know the waste framework within where you operate, where your project might happen, and to respect the government regulations and the monitoring requirements. So that's one of the main issue when you're really at the beginning. There's also an issue of around knowing your waste. So the quantity of waste that you have, but also the different types of quantity. There's challenges around how you name your waste, but we're going to go more into detail about that right after. Similarly, even when you know what waste you have and how much you have, you also need to find recyclers. So you need to be aware if they exist and you need to be able to identify them. And even then, there's also questions around how you can contractualize with them. So again, I'm going to go more into detail on these two aspects. One of the main challenge is even if you've been able to do all of the above, and so you have found a recycler that you're ready to work with, and you know your waste and you know the quantity of waste that you might have, there's really an issue of the cost return and on the economies of scale. So oftentimes what NGOs might have is only a small proportion of waste for the recyclers, and so it might be quite costly actually to manage it. And so there's whole questions around the investment that you can put and the return that you might have if recyclers agree to work with you with the waste that you have. There's also questions around dangerous waste, of course, especially for medical NGOs, but also for every NGO with regards to e-waste, so laptops, and so on. And finally, there's also the question of what do you do when there are no local recyclers, because that can also be the case. You can always work with the informal sector or look at how to implement reverse logistics back to the capital where there might be a recycler. Or you can also envision managing transboundary movements, which is a whole other thing which we're going to go more into detail afterwards. So that's kind of a long list of the problems that we've identified with the members of the working group, and that we try to answer as much as we can, and we're going to try to present those potential answers today. Very quickly, we'd be interested to know if you encounter similar issues. If you've ever questioned or looked at how to manage your waste, if you have been encountering some of these issues. So here you can either use your phone and scan the QR code that's on the screen or go to slido.com and put in the code. And we know that this is also not an exhaustive list. Okay, some people are finding all the same problems. We know that it's not as an exhaustive list, and right after, if you have any other, you can also put it. We have a little section for this as well. Um, thank you, Philindia. We know that, yeah, that might be of an issue. That's also because the people participating um, are part of the working group, and so are part of the people that highlighted those challenges. Okay, so we have some feedback. Thank you. And if there's any other issue that you might be facing, and if you haven't questioned yourself about that either, you don't have to put anything. That's just in case anybody has something to put. And otherwise, I'm going to pass it on to Celine so that she can present one. Oh, okay, monitoring. Thank you. Yeah, that's very true, actually, which might not be an aspect that we've included in the slides.
Okay, thank you for this feedback on monitoring and reporting. That's part of. Okay, so just a little quick review about what is the main waste that we are dealing with in humanitarian or development sector. So basically, in general, for what we could see as well from our analysis, it was mainly plastic. Paper and cardboard are regular but not so complex to manage. E-waste, it's a big deal. Use oil, tire, batteries, a big deal. Solar equipment as well. But we have as well chemical product as fertilizer or old chlorium are other type of waste more relative to equipment. To program activity. And during this session as well, we are not going to entrance in detail in the medical waste, also called DASHRI, but it's like a specific topic with a good support from the guidance of ICRC in case. Okay, let's move on. Next slide, please. Okay, it's as well interesting to understand that for us, we are thinking about the category of waste, but where we are at the place of the recycler, we need to think that, by example, a laptop, it's multiple composite. And then we'll think about what is the number of battery, what is the number of screen, and different like big pieces that are gonna to get and to be able to recycle or to resell. So we need sometimes to change a little bit and not talking about item, but category of component as well. Okay. Knowing our waste, definitively it's one of the first stage of all the journey to put in place a waste management system. And here I'm going to talk a little bit about the experience that we have in our pilot from Action contre la faim, Action Against Hunger. In few countries, we already piloted. Okay, basically the same list that you could just see before, that is actually a list that is used by the REC and proposed in the quick waste management guidance that they develop. That we are gonna to use as well the same database for collecting the recycler. So it's the same list of ways that we are using to be aligned in the sector. Okay. So we made annual estimation based on a physical calculation. We use 1 week of calculation that we extend per month, that we extend per year, to have a rough idea about what is the waste volume and category of waste that we had. At the moment, we did this pilot for the office and warehouse, but we are extended as well currently to the program activity to understand better what is our category of waste and the volume, because definitively we need to have this information before to start to connect and contact recycler, because it's going to have to be the main information that they will ask to us. Okay, so next slide, please. Yeah, so basically physical counting, it's a job that it can be done just once at the beginning of the process. It can be as well done further for the monitoring process after putting in place mitigation measure and action of reduction with the team. But it's definitely the first stage, and it's good to make like a calculation on a weekly base and physical weighting more that estimation. We could prefer this methodology on the physical that base, it's a second methodology, based on the procurement, okay, which is another step. The both methodology can be used. It depends if you have the capacity of to be present physically, but the first one I will suggest that it's more important. And as well, we can really analyze what is the type of materials that we have and the stage of use. Okay, thank you. So from this weighting, and there's the table that you could see before, we can get like a diagram, an estimation about what is the category of waste in terms of volume. So, by example, the non-recoverable waste here was around more than the 30%. Mainly, it was about 20% for the recycled plastic, like the PET, the PP, and HDPE that are the blue parts, clear blue, but as well the WE, so e-waste, was as well one of the major volume, like around 20% as well. So from this analysis, we can start to move on and go on the identification of the recycler.
Thank you, Celine. So, as we were saying, once you know what kind of waste you have and the quantity of your waste, you need to find if there is any recyclers that exist in the area where you're working and where your project is taking place. So, there's a few ways you can find out. Firstly, you could get in contact with the Ministry of the Environment and the department that is in charge of waste to get advice and potentially a list of recyclers. So that's if there's a ministry and you can have a contact with them. So that can always be a good source and also a way to respond to the first challenge that we've highlighted in knowing the local regulations and so on. You can always use look on the internet or get in contact with environmental NGOs that might be aware of what kind of actors are on the field. And you can also go and take a visit on a recycling area. So that's more for in the informal sector, and we're going to go more into detail about that afterwards. And of course, there's a really good resource as well that's been developed by the Joint Initiative and the REC project, which compiles mappings of, which is a mapping, sorry, of recycling facilities and recyclers throughout different countries where humanitarians operate. I'm going to put the link in the chat, but basically it is a living document. So it is up to people that use the document to provide feedback on this mapping on the recyclers, and it can be a very good step, a good first step, sorry, to look if there's already been an assessment, so you don't have to do all the steps that we did before, and you can try to get in contact with them to plan out a visit, which is what we're going to talk right after. So it's a really good starting point as well.
Thank you. So now the stage of the assessment of the recycler. So basically, here we're gonna through the different step of a technical visit, but you can all start by directly the visit, or you can as well make like a tender request for quotation, asking all the documentation, and then do the visit. But keep in mind that perhaps you will not be able to be in touch with small business, small recyclers. So it's interesting as well to have this parallel assessment to ensure that you are assessing a maximum of operators. Okay, so we worked from ACF and the REC on a technical visit spreadsheet with different rubric. Mainly, it was about the governance of the structure. So where we was looking for is if there is any certification, policy, what are the geographical sector covered, about as well the security and the safety of the workers, what are the working conditions. So basically, more general. On the recycling process, we split it in the different phases. For example, for the collection phase, what are their gears and material, what is the volume of waste as well that they are managing per type of category of waste. Sometimes we could see that big recyclers are not accepting small quantities, so it's really a challenge. So here we go with strategy of pool services between different NGOs that can be really looked for or with other organizations. Okay. About the warehousing, so it's the first stage when the waste arrived to the area of the recycler. Does it clean? Does there is any fence? How is managed the hazardous waste if they are managing it? Does it like good storage condition? Next step about the sorting, if they are managing themselves the recycling, of course. What are the protocol, their capacity, which type of gears, machine, and so on. Analyzing the physical security condition as well. Then on the recycling itself, what are the volumes, the methodologies, the process? Does this everything is made in-house, or what is the material transferred to their partner? Does they manage it inside the country, national level, or does they export? So which condition and which partner? Here we go, especially for hazardous waste, like the e-waste, is really important to know who are their partner. And we need to have equivalent of MOU or contract or any information that will ensure us that they have already like a process ongoing today, not only in the past, but with their partner. We want to ensure that the final process of recycling is properly managed with like a formal company. Okay, and that is really important for e-waste, for battery, for what is hazardous waste. Okay. And so as well, analyzing what is the final disposal. Perhaps not all of the material that they receive are recyclable locally. So what is the part that they transfer to incinerator, to landfill? Does the landfill is a technical and protect landfill, or does it formal and informal one as well? So all these questions need to be mapped, analyzed, and if possible, take some photo for reports if they allow you to. Okay. So all this guidance, you can actually find it like Annex 2, called Waste Management and Recycling Questionnaire, on the document developed by the REC called Waste Management and Recycling Assessment Guidance, which is a really good piece of work. Thank you for the REC team for this. Okay, we will share with you later on in the chat the links of the document, of course. Okay, contracting recycler. So when you made these different technical visits, we consider in ACF that it's service provider process. So we are following a procurement procedure. So one of the steps, complementary of the technical analysis, will have to get a quotation or price about from the company, and as well if they have any like document as commercial registration or licenses from the government, or even if certification like ISO is the document that we will ask to complement their folder, their dossier. Okay, then we do a grid analysis in general, so a committee from, by example, technical department, or even if WASH have good expertise in general to give guidance on this, and logistic to select the proper recycler as service provider. So we will look at, for the selection, as the stage that the recycler is covering. More he's covering stage, more it's interesting, because we can ensure like a better view and secure what is the process in place. So from the collection to the dismantling to the recycling until the exportation, and having the information of the non-recover waste, that will be really interesting. But it depends in which area you are. For example, in remote location, probably you will have only the information of the collection process, because they collect and they sell to bigger company that are transforming the material in other bigger economic center. Okay. What else? As well, we will analyze the mitigation measure. So, as I say, what is the management of the non-recover waste? We will compare as well with the compliance of the local regulation. So it's another step as well. It is interesting to do at your country level, is have a look on the environmental law and what is the management of and the regulation specific to waste, because perhaps the government have like specific regulation, by example, on exportation, okay, or specific to e-waste. By example, in Nigeria, the government put in place this last year with the environmental agency what we call the extended responsibility on waste. So it's interesting to know this because you can get from this agency the list of official recyclers that can manage a different category of waste like packaging, e-waste, or battery is the work that we made. So having this stage in mind is important. Okay, another element to be analyzed and is the business plan. I mean, you are not going to chance in detail about how much is earning the company of the operator, but look at the fact that if you are dealing with an association, they need to have a business plan as well, pretty autonomous from donation. I mean, if their business process is only based on the donation, by example, of a funding or private company, they are dependent of. So after a few years or 1 year, when this funding is ending, there is a risk that they don't have anymore the capacity to run off the process. So it's another point to be analyzed. If it's like a company, in general, they are more autonomous because they will look for like a benefit. So it's important point to keep in mind. Another element, okay, what to be considered in the contract. So in terms of role and responsibility from the different stage of waste management, from the picking to the end of life, and the final treatment stage. What about the waiting process? Does we can agree with them that it's their task and responsibility to do the waiting when they're collecting or receiving the waste? So we will win time. What about the certification that they deliver, especially for hazardous waste? And here again, look at the local regulation because it can be an obligation, as in Europe, we have to get a certification to track what is the waste management and the recycling. And as well, last but not least, what is the cost? I mean, it's important that it should be like a fair cost. Sometimes the cost of treatment or recycling is not costing nothing because the recycler will earn the money by selling the second raw material. But if we have like a very small quantity, they will ask us to pay the transport, and that can be really costly because they need at final of the process to have the economic balance, of course. So here we go again. There is opportunity of pool services, okay, between different agencies to split the cost of transport through the recycler. Okay, next step, great. In case you don't find formal operator, is as well interesting to look for in the informal sector. So the first step, as well part of the assessment, is to know how they are organized, formal, not formal, what type of waste they are collecting. So it means what are the materials that have a value on the market. So it means that behind there is industrial that are looking for this second raw material. Okay, and here we go, we can start to think about what can be the categorization of the sorting as well. Okay, sometimes they are as well organized in cooperative. Okay, so the government or local governments can perhaps have this contact, or the Department of Waste Management of the municipality. That can be really interesting to propose them. In general, there will be interest to see what can be the opportunity for the group. Another element to be explored is the work of children in this area is very common, very often. And so as we want to mitigate risk and we are not allowing any child working on this area, it's really a big matter because we cannot ensure all the process of the informal sector. But by example, the group of informal sector with who we are working, it's a deal that we are asking them to respect. And of course, other projects can be explored to support this group of vulnerable family that need support, but should be like out of the process of our own waste management, of course. Okay, another point, of course, for hazardous waste like e-waste, we advise to don't transfer it to the informal sector, even if there is like a high value, because they are probably gonna to sell what is having a value, but what don't have or which is so broken that they will don't have the capacity to treat it well. For example, to transfer to an incinerator, a formal one, having a cost. So that's why working with the informal sector should be like more for like non-hazardous waste, like plastic, paper, and so on. Okay. And the third point was asking for minimum of return, recycle and non-recycle material. Here is having this contact with a group select to manage certain category of waste. We need to have a proper follow-up with them, even if we are not gonna to be able to formalize a contract because they are like individual. We want to be in loop with them, so asking what they collect, what they don't collect, ensuring that what we are transferring to them, they can like hand over it properly and sell it. And yeah, in support of the formalization. So it's happened to us, for example, in Nigeria, that an informal group of persons, we explain them what will be the value for them to register like a small business, because they will be able for us to reinforce the partnership with them. And as well, they can connect much easily with other, for example, NGO, even if company. And they succeed. So they register themselves and know that start like a small business. Okay, let's move on. Reverse logistic, big topic. Okay, first of all, let's go through this definition. So you should know what is forward logistics. So in a linear vision, so it's really from the raw material extract to be sent to the manufacturer, so for the production of product, but as well packaging. Then we have the transport stage, the warehousing stage, and as consumer, we purchase and we distribute for consumption for the beneficiary or internally. Okay, so that is the forward logistic in green. The reverse logistic is all the process up from the using to the recollection, the sorting, the again reception, inspection, and here we separate between what can be repair, reuse, or recycle, or valorizate like energy. What we want is to send a maximum of second raw material in to new products, so in manufacturing process. Okay, it's really the process of circular economy. So we need to analyze here what can be the process. First of all, what will be the waste that can have a value and that can be taken back, by example, after distribution or from the beneficiary if they are not doing the reuse themselves. Then we need to analyze what type of process of reparation? Does we do it internally with own activity, or does we can as well ask supplier, or even if the supplier of the good, to offer us these services? Okay, so it can be a services of reverse logistic internally from the supplier, or that we are gonna to ask a recycling operator to be in charge of this process. Okay, and can be for after sale, reparation, and as well for treatment of the waste. Okay, so if any local recycler exists, design the channel to transform the recycler in capital or cross-border. Okay, so it means as well that if there is no capacity locally, thinking about with which operator we can work from the capital, or even if managing an exportation. Some big company of recycler have the contacts and the process with, by example, recycler abroad. So it's interesting to go through them. Or it can be another point to managing ourselves the transfer. And here we go. I let you take the handover, Joanna, for next
Thank you.
slide.
Thank you, Celine, for explaining all of this to us. There's one last solution if you have a no local solution, is look if there is any recycling possibility in another country. So the idea is to do some transboundary movement, transporting your waste to a country where you have a solution. So it is quite a lengthy process, so we're just going to highlight this. So it's legislated under the Basel Convention. If you want to know more about the Basel Convention, I'm going to put the link in the chat. There's a short e-learning module that kind of explains what it entails. But basically, it's international convention that regulates the movement of waste and dangerous waste across borders. And so, in order to move your waste, you have to follow along the legislation of the Basel Convention. It is a complicated, lengthy, and costly process with no guarantee of success, and that's really what we want to highlight. And so there's several steps when you want to do transboundary movement with your waste that you've identified your waste, a solution in another country, which is already all the steps that we've highlighted before. So if you find a recycler that you want to work in another country, then you have to follow all those different steps to be in line with the Basel Convention. So firstly, you need to do some data collection and verification. So you need to have completed inventories with the waste item and quantities. So that refers also back to the first step that we had, but you need to have this as a document and a database to be able to share and be shared. You have to fill in all the documentation that's related to the Basel Convention. So it has a long list of documents, including notification and movement documents. It also describes what we were just saying before, so information on waste types, disposal methods, states of import, export, and transit. And then you need approval from the importing country, so the country that's gonna take in your waste. You need to have the approval from the exporting country. And you also need to have the approval from the countries through which your waste is going to transit. So that's at least, so if it's a direct to direct, that's at least 2 approvals. And then as many countries you're going through, as many approvals you need. So you can imagine how long that can take. That is very lengthy because you need to have all the approvals, knowing all your waste, having done all the recyclers identification before that. So it is quite complicated, and it can also become quite costly very fast, because if your waste is being stopped at any point in time during your journey, so that be from the exporting country, the importing country, any of the transit countries, then you're gonna have to store your waste, and that can rise up the costs very high. You can also have a very high oh, I forgot how you say in English, douane.
Custom.
Customs, thank you. Cost. So another way, if the Basel Convention, the process is too long, you could also go through countries that have bilateral agreements, because the Basel Convention trumps and is the overall regulation over all countries. But if there's a bilateral agreement between two countries, then you can actually go through that. You would be legislated under that regulation. So, for example, there's a regional East African agreement that no, I can't copy paste. I'll put the link afterwards, sorry. So that means that if both the importing and exporting countries agree, that will ease up the process, because you have no guarantee of receiving all the documents related to the Basel Conventions and approval. Whereas if they already have a regional agreement and a bilateral agreement, then you know that there's some kinds of exchanges that can be done. Also, very importantly, in each country that's a signatory to the Basel Convention, there is a representative of the Basel Convention in that country, but very often they might be quite high-placed people, and so you might not receive answers for a month. They can also be as soon as if you don't have an answer, or if your application is rejected, then you have to start all over again or see where the issues might be. So it's very lengthy, it's complicated, and it can be very costly. So it is very much a last resource solution. And oftentimes what member organizations do is that instead they try to stock the waste as long as they can and the best way possible until there is a solution that is available, basically. Or you could try to go through countries that have bilateral agreements. I see that Celine, do you want to answer Martha's question?
Yeah, thank you, Martha, for this question. So do you know if the same process is applied for hazardous and non-hazardous waste? And if there is another regulation applying for non-hazardous waste? So from my knowledge, yeah, especially there is like specific condition for hazardous waste, and in this category there is 3 subcategory, and the regulation and type of documentation are different. It will depend as well with the quantities that you have. For example, for really low quantity, the documentation needed are very light and will depend.
Okay, thank you. I was not sure about if the non-hazardous, like for cardboards or some plastics also, it was same complex process, or it was something faster, and if there was any other regulation. So
yeah, it's more simple. It's much more simple for non-hazardous waste. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
And again, as Celine was highlighting throughout her whole presentation, there's also possibilities to pool resources there. Once you know that one organization has gone through 2 countries, then and they've succeeded in doing that transfer, which is not that many organizations a day, or at least none to our knowledge, there's possibilities to pool resources and to do it collectively as organizations, so that you don't have to do it all over again on your own. And they can be more cost efficient. Thank you, Shira. We're going to try to answer the question right after. So just in conclusion, what we wanted to highlight in this presentation is all the different kinds of challenges that organizations can meet when they try to take better account of their waste and to have a waste management a regulation, or put it into practice. And so we've also highlighted that the main aspect is to manage the risk, so limit as much as you can the harm that you could potentially do. So there's always a balance between what is available, what is feasible, what you have, what is most costly. So it is quite complicated. There's also the need to build the capacities of recyclers. So as we're highlighting, in many countries, it might be the case that there are not that many facilities, but that doesn't mean that they might not be in the future. And it's very important also to work with them to try to improve their services. And it is also an important, that could also lead to activities that can generate income. So as Celine was highlighting, in some cases, it could be that the process might not be as costly because they can resell the waste that they've taken, and so it wouldn't cost as much for your own organization. And finally, as we've mentioned several times, and Cyril, that's also linked to your question, there's a lot of opportunities to pool services between different NGOs so that you can reach this critical mass to be able to do this waste management. And just importantly, to ensure all of the above, it's very important from the beginning to design humanitarian responses that integrate waste management and circular economy from the design onwards. So to include budget lines for this, and this is linked also to the second point, which is to advocate to donors to finance the real cost of environmentally sound waste management. And so it is very important to include this not as an add-on, but to really build it within the design of your project and to advocate to the donors so that they can fund this part, and so that it becomes basically not something that is specially done, but really something that becomes part of your process, so you can build a capacity and see how you could work with other NGOs. So I think that was it from my side. Celine, is there anything that you want to add?
No, but I was thinking if Philin from Hulo, here if you want to complete a little bit the comments and the response. So I hand over to you.
Yeah, maybe quickly. So I start in November last year, but of course, one of the main activity of ULO is the joint environmental initiatives. And so I'm working in the different country, but specifically now in Burkina Faso, in Central Africa, and in Lebanon, and I share a document to every logistic coordinator to have the volume, the type, hazardous, but also non-hazardous waste that are in the stock of the different NGO to evaluate with which recycler, dismantler, collector we could work with. For the moment, we didn't share in DRC, but we will probably do in Goma, for example, in the coming month. Same for Iraq. So yeah, don't hesitate to reach to me if you want more information about that.
Thank you, Finn. And just related to Cyril's question, I think, Ulu, you have some experiences of pulling together, and I think it was in Goma, but I might be wrong, where you had several organizations.
For the transboundary, so we try to start a project between CAR and Cameroon, but there are a lot of issues because Cameroon, even if they ratified the Basel Convention, they said no to receive waste from CAR. But we met some recyclers that said, no worries, guys, you could import some waste from this country. So we are always in this phase of assessment because in CAR it's easy to justify that there is no solution. So it's between CAR and Cameroon. And in DRC, we are working with a partner that export, but in Europe for e-waste. And they manage all the process. And I will, of course, keep you up to date if the transport between CAR and Cameroon will work one day, but we don't know for the moment.
Yeah, thank you very much for this information. As well as working group, because it was like a big topic that we have the last months together. We wanted to share when there is one of the NGO of the group member having or launching an exportation to use the working group to collect information if there is any NGO wanted to join, so we can like merge together and having like a big volume. From the experience of MSF, but as well from the WFP that we met, it's feasible that one organization is managing the process of documentation, which is long and complex, but it's pretty easy to add like an additional container to the initial one. But one NGO need to take the lead for the documentation. So it's something feasible. So definitively, we are looking for this opportunity of pool services. And thank you again, Philin, for your comments. I see the hand of Marta. Thank you, Marta.
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question for Philin, because the case of bringing back items or hazardous items into Europe, is it considered, because I don't know if the country in Europe has a permit to accept import waste, but I don't know if in the cases that is the same, is a producer who is selling, or there is a supply into another country, the fact that it's a return into the original country, if this kind of reverse logistics or this extended responsibility of producers that was mentioned before, if there is any kind of different regulation, or it's the reason why it could be accepted. Just yeah, wondering if there was something different in between the cases from also CAR and Cameroon and this one that coming back to Europe, or maybe the country already accepted without any problems. So
yeah, here I know in the different documents that, for example, the country accepting the waste need to have the regulation process, but in the documentation we need as well to show that the exporter country don't have the specific gears. Like the country receiving need to have the information that in the country exporting there is not the infrastructure. And here we have experience like with big hazardous waste company management like Veolia that are managing. Yeah, but it was in the documentation mentioned.
For example, for the recycler in DRC, back, so they export in South Africa for the carte mère.
Memory card.
Yeah, in Rwanda for some type of waste, in Holland for some type, in Belgium. So they choose a very specific final recycler for very specific item, where you have a country that is specialized in a type of waste. So it's because you have an industry final recycler in that country, and you don't have any other possibility in the country or regional that they send to Europe. And this is why also ULO, and if anybody would like to come with me, it could be a pleasure, and I know that maybe Céline will do. We would like to visit also this recycler in Europe, because it's really important. And for example, if we organize the movement between CAR and Cameroon, we are sure that in Cameroon also they will send some materials in Europe. We don't want to do that if we know that in France or Belgium, they will do nothing with that waste. So we would like to go to the last step. But there is no, to answer you, Marta, there is no difference for me for the process. It's the same document, like same step that they respect. Back, they said that they respect the same, and they send some example of the documentation they use to respect the Basel Convention. But sometimes it's the final recycler in Europe that managed to do all the document, and not back in DRC.
Okay, thanks, Feline, for the information.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you for this. Does anyone have any other question? Well, otherwise, thank you a lot for the session together today.
Very sorry for all the people that had problems joining in. I don't know why that happened. Sorry about that. We're gonna look into it, but thank you for those who made it.
And
Thank
feel
you.
free to contact us. Thank you a lot, Martha, Feline, and all the others that joined, Cyril, Camille, that we know.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day, guys.
Goodbye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.